Headline story: the economic impact of Nigeria's Twitter ban. Social media has become an everyday tool for work and leisure in Nigeria. The announcement of Nigeria's government banning Twitter has sent shockwaves to the country both politically and economically. The ramifications of this for Africa's largest economy are possibly wide-reaching. This is our focus today. I'm Tolulokwe Adeleru Balogun. Welcome. This is Business Edge. The banning of Twitter in Nigeria is about 3 days old. Now, while President Muhammadu Buhari's media aide, Garba Shehu, has said that Twitter has long been accused of spreading misinformation and fake news, which can have real-world violent consequences. In a statement, Shehu said there has been a litany of problems with the social media platform in Nigeria, where misinformation and fake news spread through it have had real-world violent consequences. All the while, the company has escaped accountability. By early Saturday morning, after the announcement on Friday, users across Nigeria started to experience difficulties in accessing the microblogging site, and many who can have resorted to using virtual private networks. While there are many questions about the constitutionality and legality of the ban, the economic ramifications of the ban are now taking center stage. Joining me is Tunde Leye, partner at SBM Intelligence. SBM is Nigeria's leading geopolitical intelligence platform, working with technology startups, corporates, FMCG companies, investors, insurers, and governments across Africa. Tunde, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Tolu.
So let's start with some data, because I think it's really important in this kind of conversation to use a lot of numbers and figures to sort of really show the extent of what is possible. So data from Nigeria's National Bureau of Statistics shows that unemployment rate increased to 33.3% in Q4 of 2020 from 27.1% in Q2 2020. The figure also revealed that the worst hit demographic in Nigeria were Nigerian youth. 13.9 million of them are unemployed, and that's up from 13.18 in 2018. Youth between 15 to 24 have about 6.8 million Nigerians out of jobs, and another 7.1 million are also unemployed. Social media has helped to provide non-traditional employment for many Nigerian youth. And a lot of people are wondering, why is there so much noise on the business side of things when it comes to Twitter being banned or suspended? What kind of employment, what kind of business opportunities are we talking about that microblogging site Twitter or social media has provided for Nigerian youth?
Right. So this morning I was having a conversation with a friend who is in marketing, and he told me that all of his clients have requested for him to pull all their marketing campaigns that involve Twitter. So these are big brands that I'm talking about. Think about the knock-on effect of pulling marketing campaigns by all of the big brands in the country. It means the guys that are doing the marketing online, the graphics guys that are doing the graphics for that, him who is a marketer, his staff who he needs to pay, all of them are impacted directly by this ban. So a lot of the guys in the marketing space definitely are going to be impacted. A lot of the guys in the small business space are impacted already. I remember a certain dress that went viral on Twitter earlier this year, and the lady in question sold over 200 pieces of that dress just by Twitter. And I know a lot of small businesses that are doing their business right there on Twitter. They cannot afford to have managed websites because those are expensive to manage, but they're able to leverage their following on social media to then build businesses around this. All of these types of small micro businesses are impacted by this. But on a larger scale, you look at the investment temperature. I have been having calls today. My firm I'm involved in 2 or 3 firms, and all of the investors that we've been having conversations with, interestingly, were in fundraising mode, and all of the investors that we've been having conversations with have come back to ask questions about a lot of our market assumptions, a lot of the things that that we have presented to them as present in this market. They also
let me have you hold on to that, because that's a large part of the conversation, and I'll get into that later on. But when we look at the issue of businesses, there's an estimated 40 million Nigerians on Twitter, and we've heard different things, the angry children of Twitter. We've heard different terminologies and phrasing for it. But when it comes to business, is there an estimate for how many Nigerians are using Twitter, particularly now, to do business? You've given us some examples. I've seen some examples online as well. But do we have an idea around how much business is actually done on Twitter by Nigerians?
I mean, it's a tough estimate to make. It's a tough estimate to make. But what you can think about it is this. In every social setting, and that's what Twitter is, it's a social media setting, people are buying and selling. Apart from buying and selling, people are making the connections to do business offline. One of the biggest businesses that I am personally involved in, I met the people I do that business with on Twitter. It's not a Twitter business. It's not something we sell on Twitter, but it's something that I connected with the people that I do that business with on Twitter. So you find that there are various degrees of this. There are those that do their businesses directly on Twitter. There are those that meet the people that they will do businesses with. I remember that PiggyVest, one of the biggest fintechs in the country, started off with tweets that was responded to. One of the co-founders tweeted something. This other co-founder responded to it. They continued the conversations in the DM, and we have a company the size of PiggyVest today. That's the power of that kind of thing, and that's the kind of thing that the government is stifling at the moment.
Okay.
Yeah, so you can't say this is exactly the number, but when you have a place where you have 40 million people creating network effects, there is bound to be enormous business happening in that kind of place. And that's what the government is stifling at the moment. If you just think about the economic ramifications outside of the human rights and all of the, or the constitutional ramifications, just the economic ramifications for the small people.
All right. It feels appropriate that we sort of get into this next question, and I want to take us down memory lane. And it was just last month, memory lane is not too far, about a month and a half ago, April 2021, when Twitter announced that it was actually going to set up its first African office in Accra, Ghana. The company cited Ghana's support for free speech, online freedom, and open internet. Now, many looked at it as a wise business decision. Some said Nigeria had nothing to worry about in terms of that choice. But it seems like, as we would say now, that hindsight is 2020. So running a business like Twitter and making that kind of decision, in terms of the work you do, what kind of business considerations do you think Twitter would have considered in choosing Accra, Ghana? Because it seems now imperative to sort of ask that question in the context of what's going on in Nigeria.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, Twitter already stated some of these things. Think about it for a moment. If Twitter had an office in Nigeria with a known address, with a known country manager and staff situated in Nigeria, what do you think would have happened? Do you think we would have just had a ban when the target is the telcos, or do you think that these people will probably be cooling their heels in some discrete government security facility at the moment? So that's the first thing. So security of the people that will be working in Twitter was a consideration. Apart from that, the fact that, commitment to open speech, open internet, as they have mentioned, commitment to freedom of speech, this is not the beginning of the stifling of the civic and conversation space in Nigeria. It's just one of the extensions of it. We've had situations where specific online platforms were targeted with DNS attacks because they were reporting things that were considered anti-government. We've had the stifling of the press from reporting certain things in the Northeast and all of those kinds of things. So there have been various multiple attempts to pass social media regulation that was targeted at stifling the space. So it was not out of context or out of form to think that the government would ultimately get to the point there, and they will go beyond the point. It is clear to everybody that this is only a starting point. Ultimately, this government is going to get to the point where they are banning. If they could ban Twitter tomorrow, they can say Gmail. Gmail is also a platform where people spread things, and they ban Gmail. And we will have our corporate business community, the telcos and the likes, essentially implement that. They would instruct a shutdown of the internet, and we'll see our business community implementing that as well. We've seen this. So Twitter will have seen all of these and said, you know what, I'd rather go to a place where at least I'm sure there's the rule of law. I'm sure that there is a commitment and a demonstration of that commitment to freedom of the internet.
So Tunde, let's get to the point you were trying to make earlier. So part of the work that you do with SBM is, of course, advising international investors, advising donors as well, and even governments across the continent who are looking for where to put their money. And for a while, Nigeria has been a very attractive investment destination for FDI. But we've had regulatory issues, we've had policy issues that have sort of slowed those things down. And as you said earlier, you've been taking calls today. So in general, what's the concerns? What are the sentiments of those investors that you've been advising that they have shared with you today in terms of the Twitter ban from Nigeria's government?
The biggest is that, so for every digital business that is trying to attract customers via digital means, Twitter is a big place to attract those customers, to reach those customers. That is gone. That route to market is gone. Second, for a lot of businesses that support their customers in a low-cost manner via Twitter, even the telcos themselves, a lot of customers do a lot of their customer support interfacing via Twitter, resolving issues there. That's gone as well. So you've created an increased layer of complexity. In addition, for a lot of them, the biggest risk that Nigeria has is regulatory risk for a lot of investments coming in. That's the biggest risk many want to mitigate, not market risk, not even just regulatory risk is the biggest. This has ballooned regulatory risk. And what happens is that when people want to make investments, people want to match their risk to return. The riskier the investment, the higher the returns they expect. So what has happened is that a lot of businesses that were viable at the previous risk level are no longer viable for them because of the level of returns that they promise. And so people are making decisions to, follow Twitter and route their investments to other places. That's the crux of a lot of the calls that we've had today. And that a lot of that is going to continue because people are making a decision to say, we cannot trust the Nigerian government. We cannot trust the Nigerian government. Before this, the biggest thing that was on the calls was, why do you have courts that have been shut down for 2 months? So if we have to enforce a contract, there's no courts to go to. That was the biggest thing that we were facing before. And we were talking to the investors and doing all of that. But this has ballooned regulatory risk. And to think about it, they can't even go to court to, challenge the legality of this because the courts are on strike. That is the kind of conundrum that Nigeria creates for investments, for investors. Look, we always say we are a big market, but your market is effectively what the businesses can reach. So if you continue to constrain the route to market, your market shrinks. It's not the number of bodies you have in the space that are markets. It's the number of effective people that businesses can reach. And as we constrict this space more, people will begin to say, let's go to other markets that are safer, that are more sane, that are secure.
All right, Tunde, we're going to go on a break, but a very quick question with a one-word answer. On a scale of 1 to 10, if you were to rate investor confidence right now in Nigeria, with 10 being the highest, what would your answer be?
-2.
-2. I'm going to hold you on that. So there is also a number I want you to hold on to as we go on a break. It's 6 billion 531 million. There's more. Just give me time. Also, 267,152 naira. I'll tell you what it means when we come back. So we're looking at the economic cost of Nigeria's Twitter ban. Tunde Layet, partner at SBM Intelligence, is still with me. Let's get back to the data, Tunde. Now, internet or social media shutdowns cost sub-Saharan countries across the continent $237.4 million in 2020. According to NetBlocks, the Internet Freedom Monitoring Platform, the cost of banning Twitter in the past 3 days amounted to over $18 million. $18,043,171, and that's over 6.5 billion naira. Now, some people will hear these numbers and may not believe them, or they may see them as being bogus. But is that the value? Do you think there's that much value in Twitter in Nigeria? And how are these losses coming? Where are they coming from?
I think there's probably more. That number, I think it understates. First is in terms of lost business, just lost business. I gave the examples of campaigns that have been shut down. That's lost business. That will factor in that number. There's also lost sales, people that would ordinarily have made sales by being able to connect on Twitter. That is another one. The third is just increased cost of engagement, of customer engagement. So you think about a customer that would have sent a DM at no extra cost to get an issue resolved. That customer has to pick up the phone and make a call, and is not able to use a service for a longer period of time because there's an added layer of complexity. And you would think that also the guys that are taking the calls and doing those resolutions are also getting more and more overwhelmed, making them less able to serve. That's another one. Another one is that the telcos who would ordinarily get traffic and get data usage because of the use of these social media platforms will get reduced data usage as well. And so we can go on and on and on about all of the either losses directly or as a second factor that will factor into this kind of number. And ultimately, for a country like Nigeria that is experiencing stagflation, that is experiencing low growth, just came out of a second recession, that has the issues that we have around exchange rates and all of that, there's no sense in stifling an area that allows the people that are unable to find jobs in the formal space to at least be able to do business and find alternate means of employment, either domestically or with international within the international space. So I totally agree that I believe that number is actually an understatement.
All right, so let's add some more numbers to this. So there are different areas that are and will fill this ban: influencers, freelancers, startups, and merchants. PwC estimates that numbering about 117.4 million SMEs in Nigeria contribute 48% of the national GDP, account for 96% of businesses, and about 84% of employment. Many of them have leveraged the internet, especially social media, and especially Twitter, for their business activities. Depending on how long this goes on, Tunde, do we or can we anticipate possible layoffs, higher number of inflation for this Q2? We're in Q2, yeah, Q2 when the numbers come out. So, what do you think the long-term effects can be, depending on how long this runs out?
You're again spot on. There will be people that would have to let people go. Think about all the companies that have people that work as digital marketers, digital storytellers, and all of that. If they had a team of 3 before, they may need to let 1 or 2 of them go. Think of the companies that had campaigns. Think of the graphics people that would have been churning out graphics for these campaigns. Think about the content creators. Think about the influencers. Think about the small seller that would ordinarily run adverts. Even if they are able to run on some other platforms, there will be lost sales, and so there will be that delivery or logistics company that ordinarily would have 30 bikes before, but says, look, I've seen a reduction in business, so I need to let 5 of my riders go. And you can see the knock-on effect as you continue to dig deeper and deeper and deeper into the economic layers that come from being able to trade. Look, social media is a place where you create network effects. That's the most powerful thing that social media creates, network effects. And what network effects does is to amplify trade and amplify, of course, social interactions and exchange of ideas. One of the areas that we're not considering is the absence of the exchange of ideas that can create businesses. We talked about piggyvest, which is the most interesting example. In these days, in this period, how many piggyvests have not happened because people have been unable to talk on social media, on Twitter? How many of them have not happened? We don't think about that. So definitely there is the lost opportunity, and then there is the reduction in the existing opportunity. Trade is one of the biggest contributors to our GDP. So when we stifle an area that is driving trade, I don't know what we are thinking about in a period where we have GDP that is already growing at a snail abysmal pace.
All right, so as we wrap up, I want to just share some more data because I think it's important, again, to center this conversation with numbers. So what we also have is that Nigeria could lose $939.7 million every week that access to the internet is blocked. Another estimate is that Africa's largest economy will lose $134 million every single day. Tunde, I know that SBM Intelligence is very likely running risk scenarios right now for yourselves and also for your partners and those clients you have across the continent. But what are we looking at in terms of this extending into Friday? What are we looking at in terms of this extending beyond even Friday? As we know that Garba Shehu has come out to say that the ban is temporary now. But in terms of the risk to the economy, in terms of risk to investment, what are we projecting? Very quickly, please.
This morning, we released a report that essentially analyzed and painted this scenario. So I'd encourage everybody to go to SBM Intelligence's website to take a look at that report. There are two orders of effects that this has. There's the direct effect that it has in terms of, stopping things that are going on already. But there's also the second order effect, which is investors that will begin to increase their risk premium on Nigeria. And that, for me, is even the bigger issue than what, because I know that there'll be diplomatic pressure, there'll be all sorts of pressure, and they're going to raise the ban very soon. Ultimately, they're going to raise it very soon. However, people will have made a mark to say, when we are going to Nigeria, these are the kind of risks that we need to factor in. So if we were happy with a 20% return for this kind of, for Nigeria's risk before, please, we need a 30% return now. That is the biggest challenge that we have created by making a move of this nature.
All right, Tunde, we'll end it there, but we know throughout the week there will be some developments. Also hearing reports that possibly Nigeria is engaging with China in terms of a firewall for the country. So conversations are multi-layered, as you said.
That's the kind of company we want to create.
There's the political conversation, there's the economic one, and we'll be reaching out to SBM. Tunde Leye, partner at SBM Intelligence, joining me on Business Edge as we take a look at the economic implications of Nigeria's Twitter ban. Tunde, always a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
As we wrap things up, let's start with a bit of NC4 to watch. We quickly let you know a few stories we're keeping our eyes on. A made-in-India micro-blogging platform, Koo, has said that it is now available in Nigeria and is keen. They are very, very keen on adding new local languages for users in the West African nation. The move took place a day after the Nigerian government announced an indefinite suspension of Koo's rival Twitter in the country. So let's see how that plays out. Number 2 on the list. The Nigerian economy may have declined by over 2 billion naira in just one day of the Twitter ban, according to data from netblocks.org, a mapping internet freedom platform. They also suggest that this could go on and cost Nigeria even more. Number 3, Aliko Dangote, chairman of the Dangote Group, has announced that Dangote Industries $2.5 billion, 3 million metric tons granulated fertilizer plants will commence the sale of fertilizer on Monday. And finally, the DevKey Group has announced its withdrawal from the race to invest in troubled Mumias Sugar Company barely 2 weeks after it expressed interest in the country. Now, according to the group chairman, the move was necessitated by the increased political unrest in the transaction. And that's it on NC4 to watch. That wraps up Business Edge for today. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll be following very closely the developments coming out of Nigeria. And you can also find that on the top of the hour as we bring you all the latest news from across the continent. I'll see you again soon. I'm Tolulope Adileru Balogun.